I'm Sandy Hynds. I'm a local artist, but I also live part-time in Florida, so I am partially a Florida artist as well, and I'm active there with other art groups. I started out as a young person, very young, in grade school, just drawing and drawing and drawing. And I started out drawing airplanes for a while. And then I was in love with elephants, so everything involved elephants. And then I got to my later years, or as a young person, my later years, I started drawing figures, and I designed their clothes. And I did that for a long time. And then finally, when I was in grade school in Pittsburgh, they had art programs, and I was selected to participate in their art programs. They were scholarships that I had received. I just always painted. And when I was about 13 or 14, a family friend gave me a set of oil paints. And so I started painting in oils, and I was an oil painter for a long period of time until I was introduced to watercolors in a class with Billy Jackson, and that was a long time ago. And then I continued doing watercolors and switching back and forth between oils and watercolor. But watercolor became easier to transport. You weren't dealing with a lot of media and turpentine and things of that nature. So that was basically the beginning of my art career. And it took a long time before I finally could say I was an artist. And that involved being accepted into shows, winning awards, and I just really painted what I saw and what I felt. I grew up, as I said, in a city, and so a lot of my early work dealt with just figures. It was a big city, so you couldn't really embrace it, except I did do a lot of figurative work in those days. And that was my early college days. I did not go to college and study art. I would pick up an art class whenever I could and when I needed a good grade. So, and then I moved to Champaign, Illinois, over 50 years ago. And I was enamored with the fields and the big sky and the variety that happened in the sky. So for a long time, I painted that genre a lot. Eventually, I went back to some of my early days of buildings, and I can embrace them a little better because they were closer, and the light hit these buildings in such a way that it just created all this excitement for me. And then I began to tinker a little bit with abstract. The abstract work is, in reality, it really is harder because you're dealing really with color and space and design, and they have to work. I start out with those rather freely and not thinking about anything originally, but then once the painting begins to develop, I have to make some big decisions, which way to go. Go this way, that way, up, down. So, and they have to have meaning. It has to have a feeling. It's not just design and color. It has to have some kind of a soul. And I think that's what I look for in other paintings. I love looking at other artwork, and I love seeing if they have soul. There's lots of well-done paintings. There's lots of excellent drawing in some paintings. But for me, it has to be more than that. It has to create an atmosphere, a sense of place, and excitement. There's nothing worse for me than a boring painting. When you have something in front of you that you've responded to, like a building and with the light, I still have to deal with figuring out how I want to make it personal. I rarely have a blue sky. I usually change the sky color, or I start with the sky color, and then the rest of the painting develops from there. Sometimes I do a lot of underpainting and then paint on top because I love to see the color come through the different areas of the painting. For me, that creates excitement in a painting. The abstracts kind of start very freely. I might start with the idea of a particular color, maybe direction. There's a painting in the show called Pirouette, and I didn't really discover that until the painting was really finished. And I started looking at it when I was really photographing it. I thought, gee, that looks like a figure doing a pirouette. And I thought, so I added one little piece to the work. I put like another foot kind of coming off the upper foot so that it really gave a little more of a feeling of somebody doing a pirouette. But it did not start out that way. I was really just dealing with a composition, the figure being off-center, where the main thought originally was off-center, even though it wasn't a figure when I started, and then developing the colors around it. And so, and that's how that painting kind of grew and then became named ultimately. Edward Hopper has been one of my favorite painters, not originally. Growing up in Pittsburgh, I lived in the neighborhood where I could easily get to the Carnegie Museum of Art. And I would go over there and just wander around the buildings. And there was a painting in that show one day. It was an Edward Hopper. I didn't really know much about him. I was pretty young. And it was of two people on a deck of a boat. I found it haunting. I found it disturbing. I think it was the feeling of isolation that I got that made me feel very uncomfortable. But I remembered that painting for a long time. As the years have gone by, I've seen more and more of his work. I think there was a big show of his, a big retrospective show at the Art Institute in Chicago, which I attended. I have been told that some of my paintings that are basically buildings, that they'll say to me, that's very Edward Hopperish. Now, whether somehow or other he got into my soul and these come out that way, but I'm not trying to do it. It just happens. I'm really responding to the light and the feeling of the space and the atmosphere of the environment. And I'm not thinking of Edward Hopper at all.